Alright everyone, hope you had a good week. I've been dropping a few hints lately on Instagram and on my last video that I've been building up a new trail bike. Well, I'm just going to go straight into it, and here it is. This is a Specialized camber. This is actually a model that's a few years old now. I'm not sure if you even make it anymore. This is with the 27.5-inch wheels, and I'll tell you why I've gone for this in a minute. Firstly, to explain that this is not a replacement for my other bike, and my other bike wasn't a replacement for my orange that I had. The Merida, the enduro bike that I built up, is a whole new beast which I built up with all new or second-hand parts, so I still had all the parts left over from my orange. As good as the enduro bike is, it's a lot of bike. It rides amazingly for going down enduro, steep, downhill, stuff like that, but for anything where you want to do any trialsy stuff, imagine Danny's wee day out. If I want to do anything like that, I find that really, really hard, especially with the way I've got the bike set up with the coil forks, super plush. I've got my suspension pretty soft, slow rebound, trying to get rid of that arm pump. It just does not ride trials or even some really jumpy, flowy trails like this. It just doesn't ride them very well at all. Now, one reason why I went for the Specialized is, firstly, I found it cheap on Pinkbike. This is a used frame. I'm not quite big enough a deal to be able to afford my brand new frames just yet. So I had to scour the internet. Took me a while, but eventually I found this one. Other than the price, the other reason why I really wanted to go for this was the geometry. More and more bikes these days seem to be getting longer and slacker, and a bit like my enduro bike, it's amazing for going down hills, but if I want to do the trialsy stuff, I don't particularly want a super long or super slack bike. The Specialized, I think, has a 68-degree head angle, which is ridiculously steep in this day and age, and the chainstays are really short at about 420 mil or something like that, which makes it pretty damn good for the manuals. Now, I was tempted to respray this, get rid of all the branding, because Specialized aren't paying me, why should I advertise them? But to be honest with you, I just got so impatient. I just wanted to get this bike built up as soon as possible and get out in this amazing weather. So yeah, it's red, but to be fair, red is good. I like red bikes. Red tends to be the fastest as well, so yeah, it's going to stay this colour for the time being. I had a few people ask me, what was up with the orange? Why did I go on to get rid of it? Why didn't I keep the sponsorship? And to be honest with you, I absolutely love the orange. It was brilliant for riding down the trails. I really like the brand. They're still one of my favourite brands ever, not just because they're local to me, but just because their ethics and ethos, I just love the way they work. However, I was on just a product only deal with them. I hadn't signed any contract, and as much as I like the bike, I did find it a bit too flexible when I was trying to do any of the trialsy stuff. The elevated swing arms, I find, don't lend themselves very well to stiffness, and I just struggled a little bit having the control for the trialsy stuff. So I really like the brand. I really like it for riding trails because the flexi back end actually makes it track quite nicely. The other thing is I'm now free to do whatever I want, like social media wise. I don't have any obligations to post pictures of this bike. I don't have to do any of that. So it just gives you a bit more freedom. And unless someone's gonna come along and give you an actual paycheck, yeah, I don't want any obligations. Anyway, I think that's probably enough chat by now. As you can see, people are riding the trails. I want to get riding the trails. I actually haven't ridden this bike yet. I literally added the gear cable on this morning, and this is the first time I've ever been out rolling on it. So I'm going to give you guys some details exactly what I'm running on this, and then I'm going to do some runs and see how it feels. So first off, like I mentioned, this is a Specialized camber. This is a medium-sized frame. It has 130mm travel, and it's nice and stiff and light. So should be pretty good. If I was riding more just trails and enduro stuff, I'd probably go up to a size large. One thing that really impressed me with this frame was how all the shock mounts, the pivot points, they're all alloy. Every single fastening on this frame is aluminium. Now that's, to me, a really, really good point. Attention to detail, I'm impressed. This frame has half internal, half external routing. The rear brake is actually external routed, actually on the other side, which then swaps over up at the head tube, and the gear cable is internal, pops out of the bottom bracket, goes back into the chainstay, and then out of the rear dropout. One thing I don't like about this frame, however, and didn't know it had it, is it has a fork stop. The down tube is nice and straight for stiffness, however, it does mean there's no clearance for your fork crowns. So they've put a little rubber stop in there to try and stop your forks from denting the down tube. I'm worried that this means I'll have trouble doing pivots and some tricks, and you know what, I even fancied being able to do a few bar spins and stuff. But we'll give it a try. I'm sure if I wanted to, I could find a way around it, grind it off, put a longer custom bottom headset in. But for now, we'll see how it is. I'm running mostly the same parts that I had on my Orange, other than a few key changes. I'm running the same forks I had on my Orange. These are the Fox 34s with the Kashima coating. They just work pretty well. I've had them serviced by Flowtech and they're smooth as butter. They were the 15mm through axle and they're the boost versions. Specialized have a bit of history of only supplying shocks that work on their bike. This is no different. This is the Fox Float rear shock with a built-in yoke which goes to the rear triangle there. Some people have put off by this, but I'm not too bothered. You can buy replacement yokes if you wanted to change the shock, so I'm going to see how this shock works. If I wanted to swap for something else, you know, I can do, there's nothing stopping me. I'm running the same wheels I had on my 4. These are the Spank Spike rims with the Hope Pro 4 hubs, and I've got these onto the Conti de Baron tyres. They just seem to work pretty well in the UK. Lots of changeable weather and riding conditions. They just seem to be, you know, pretty damn good all-rounder. Now I've had these wheels for nearly 2 years now, and I've not had to touch them, true them, do anything to them, so they've been absolutely brilliant. And the rear one has not skipped an engagement or done anything it shouldn't do. So as you can see, I've been a bit lazy. I haven't even cleaned the mud off it from my last ride on my Orange. But even though I treat them so badly, they actually work pretty well. The only thing I'd like different from the rear hub is more engagement points. So at some point, I would like to try an Industry 9 hub on the back, see how I get on with it. Drivetrain wise, gone have the Hope hubs. They were good, but I find them overcomplicated. You need so many tools to get them on and off. And my chainring kept on coming loose. It couldn't physically come off, but you know, it just kept on rattling and it was really annoying. I've gone with the tried and tested Shimano SLX cranks. You know, I've had these on bikes before, I've had them on trials bikes. They're super strong for the weight, super simple to fit, and yeah, nice and cheap as well, so pretty much a no-brainer. Doing me a bit of foot traction, we have the Crank Brothers stamp pedals. These are actually the size small. On the trials bike I go for the size large. Yeah, but sometimes I hit my pedals when I'm on the big bikes, so I've gone for the size small just to try and give a little bit more clearance. Driving the chain, we have a 1-up. Is it a 1-up? We have a 1-up component narrow wide ring. This one's a 32 and it's perfectly round. Now I've gone for a round one because I'm going to be doing some trialsy type riding on this bike. I just wanted it to feel a little bit more consistent. I think if I was riding more trails full time on it, or just if it was my only bike, I'd probably go for an oval ring. I just find them just to be a little bit more efficient. Now Specialized seems to have a bit of a strange bottom bracket situation going on. It's one of these BB30 type things, I don't know, there's so many standards. I had a look online and I found a company called Praxis Works who make a BB30 screw-in type thing to fit Shimano cranks. Either way, it seems to work pretty well. The only issue seems to be the cranks are now super far outboard and my chain line seems to be not ideal. So I need to have a look online and look into that a little bit more and see what the deal is. At the back, I'm using Hope's own cassette body. Now this is actually the same and only one that I've ever had. So this is as old as my Orange is, which was about 2 years, I think. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can see, but it looks like it's hardly worn at all, especially the steel ones. Certainly seems to be working pretty well. There's no skipping or anything like that. So yeah, well impressed with that. The shifting parts, I'm using Shimano on this bike. I've got an XT rear mech. This is the Shadow type with a clutch, which is pretty handy. So I've just got that combined with an SLX 11-speed shifter, just doing the duties, and yeah, no drama. The last bit of drivetrain is the tensioner. This is a fun something or other, I can't remember the model name. I got this off Chain Reaction, it's like 20 something quid. Yeah, just simple, works pretty damn good so far. Nice, light, cheap, yeah, not much to say about it really. Going through it, I have a SRAM chain. I like SRAM chains, they're just simple, they seem pretty strong. You don't need any special links or tools for it, so yeah, again, highly recommended. Just holding on to my seat post, I have a Hope bolt-on seat clamp. I've had these on numerous bikes, and yeah, again, if it works, it works. Not really much to say about it. Looks pretty cool, clamps the seat post, job's a good one. Speaking of seat posts, I have a Magura Viron post on this bike. One reason being, I wasn't too sure whether or not this bike had internal routing or not. So I just bit the bullet, got one of these, don't need any cables on it. It's just completely wireless and don't have to worry about threading anything through the frame. Now I've had a Magura Viron post before, and I found it really good. Again, a super advantage not having to thread anything through the frame. However, I found the remote too easy to spin around the bars and too hard to find the actual button. Fortunately, these days they've added on some kind of cover which goes over, and instead of having button at the top, button in the middle, button at the bottom, it now just makes it into one button, so you can press it wherever and it just activates it, and it's super easy to push. You don't have to search for the button. Yeah, much better. They've also supposedly sped up the time it takes to activate the post. Previously, you press the button and there's a half a second wait. Now I think it's only a quarter of a second now. Now that was a bit of a pain in the ass in riding the last bike, but hopefully with this added speed of pressing the remote to activating the seat, it should make life a little bit easier. Speaking of seats, I got myself an SDG something or other. I don't know which model this is. Again, I got this second hand. I wanted it because it's pretty low profile. I wanted my seats when dropped to be as low as possible, and these are pretty light. I think they're good looking, and it was cheap, second hand, so yeah, pretty happy with it. The handlebar I'm using on this bike is a nuke-proof Sam Hill model. Again, just fairly cheap, and the shapes were pretty nice. I've got a slightly higher rise one because I like the looks and I wanted it to be a fun, playful bike, so I just wanted the front end to be a little bit higher. I've currently got this full width, which I think is about 800mm, or maybe even slightly over 800. I may chop these down, who knows. This is going to be my first ride on it, so I haven't decided yet. Holding the bars, I've got the Hope 50mm stem. This is actually the one I had on my enduro bike until Manny went and made me a new one. Should probably ask him to go and make me a new one for this one. But until then, Hope 50mm stem, 31.8mm bars. Yeah, works pretty well, looks pretty nice. Yeah, bit expensive, but you know, sometimes you've got to pay a bit for quality. I'm actually running the headset that came with this bike. I think it was a Specialized own one, and then I've just added a Hope top cap to the top just to, you know, disguise it, and I didn't have enough headset spacers anyway, so it just makes the bars a little bit higher as well. Speaking of spacers, I've got plenty on there. Have a count, they're 5mm each, so yeah, pretty high. Like on my trials bike, I'm running the ODI Stay Strong grips. I just wanted my bikes to feel a little bit familiar to each other. These grips work pretty well in the wet without gloves. They're just pretty comfy, and they pay for a good cause, so yeah, pretty keen on these. Last but not least, brakes wise, we have the Magura MT7s with the HC3 levers. I've actually got these on 200mm rotors just for extra power. You know, I don't think you can have too much power with these brakes, and I've actually got them wound into the most powerful setting as well. Now these are actually brand new fitted. I've not bed these brake pads in yet, so riding this bike for the first time is going to be pretty interesting. I think this frame was only made for 160mm rotors, so fingers crossed 200mm don't push it past its limit and end up cracking it, but until then I'm going to enjoy having good working brakes. So there you go everyone, that is my new trail bike, my new addition to my team. I've got my trials bike, my enduro bike, and now this one. I can't wait to see how it rides. Now I haven't told you lots of geeky things yet. I haven't told you how much pressure I've got in my forks or how much pressure I've got in my shocks. I'm gonna have a ride, see how they feel, and just adjust them as I see fit, and then I'll know what pressures and stuff I'm running, what rebounds, how many clicks, all that stuff. Tire pressure wise, I normally run between 25 and 30 psi. I don't currently have any tire inserts in there like the Hook Norris or the Cush Core or anything like that. I'm going to risk it, and if I need to put those in later, then I will do. The only thing left to do now is get my helmet on, get out on these trails, get some cameras going, and see how it rides. So let's do that. Unfortunately, things don't always go to plan. I wrapped up filming and then I went onto the track, and it turns out I didn't put enough sealant on my back tyre and it just was going down pretty fast. However, I went home and that small ride gave me an idea of some things I wanted to change. Firstly, I lowered my stem by about 12mm. It just felt just a little bit too high. As it is now, it feels a lot more like my trials bike. My hand and feet positions are pretty much identical. The other thing I ended up doing was cutting the bars down from 800mm to about 780mm. Just to, again, make it a little bit more like my trials bike. They're still a little bit wider, but they're a little bit more in line with how my bike normally feels. First impressions of the bike, it feels so nippy and light. It actually feels awesome. It feels really short, and I actually like that. That's one thing that I went for this bike for. Like I said, bikes getting longer and longer. I wanted one that feels a bit more shorter, a bit more trials-like. Ended up putting a bit more pressure and faster rebound in my shocks just to make it a bit more bouncy and poppy when going down the trail. So, that's enough chat. You guys wanted some riding, so let's get onto this track and have a look. Before I set off down the trails, a few people rightly pointed out in my last video the Rilo had a lot of wind noise. So hopefully you can see that I've added a bit of foam onto the mic, and from what I saw yesterday it seems to work pretty well. I don't think it's going to get rid of everything, but that's the best I could do without it blocking the 360 camera, so let's find out. Oh, ow. Right, let's see how this mic cover works. Let's see how this bike rides. It's a very dry, dusty day today. So a bit slidey. Whoa, the bike's got some pop to it. Don't know whether that's the shorter travel or the geometry. Hang on, I kind of made that one then. It's close. Let's go all the way down. I left my camera filming at the top. I'm sure no one's going to steal it. Oh, manual as well. Wow, practically overshooting that one. Whoa, what a difference. I don't know whether that's a lack of wind, this bike being bouncier, but that was night and day difference. Now, how was the mic? Could you hear everything all right? A bit slidey. So there you go everyone, that is my new trail and I guess trick bike, my Specialized camber. First impressions are this thing is exactly what I wanted it to ride like. The super short back end makes manuals amazing, the nice short reach makes it good for bunny hops, and the steep head angle makes it just more nimble, just more playful. Now that I've lowered the stem and cut the bars down, it just feels like my bike, if you know what I mean. It feels very similar to my Hex, other than being a bit squishy, but hopefully that means I can actually do some good Trasy stuff on it. I was quite happy how it got over that log, and I just need to go and find some more stuff and see what this thing can really do. One thing that's really surprised me is how little I've actually noticed the fork stop. I mean, I've done a couple of pivots where it has tapped it slightly, but in a whole, I've actually not noticed it at all, which is a pleasant surprise. There may be bits and bobs I change as I ride this bike more. Like I said earlier, some more engagements on the rear hub would be nice. But until then, this is my bike as it is. If you have any questions, please ask. I'll try my best to answer them. And if you want any reviews on any of these parts, let me know. And after I've done some miles on them, I can give you that. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope you like my new bike. And yeah, get out, ride your own bikes, be fluent, and I'll catch you all next time. So take care, everyone. Bye-bye.